Hello and welcome to Owning the Narrative. I am Bulow. The show will feature the top news of the week, complete with my observations, and even a little bit of sarcasm thrown in. The top news stories will be taken from my morning news briefings that I write on the Rick Bulow New Media blog every weekday morning. If you go on to like what you see, smash that thumbs up button. And now, let's go right into the news. Yesterday, a popular social media alternative had been reinstated to the internet. Yes, folks, Parler is back, and there's this, and it has a new CEO. This coming from Conservative Daily News, a return of Parler, well, Sorta. Parler, this free speech alternative to Twitter, has restarted, although with a little bit of a hitch in its giddy up. I'll begin my own post by acknowledging that Parler is basically going through day one pains, with the added issue of it already having been the fastest growing social media platform prior to Amazon, Apple, and Google's thuggery. Our first attempts on Monday afternoon to log into our account on the desktop site still redirected us to the old status page. Once we were finally able to log in, we were met with extremely poor performance and some things that were just broken. For starters, badges aren't displaying, profile picture missing, and our feed wouldn't load after several minutes of trying. We were also unable to post anything then onto the profile. Well, it was empty, which is disturbing since we had several thousand followers prior to the blackout. With the desktop version basically unusable, we turned our attention to the mobile app and were met with similar results. The feed wouldn't load with or without echoes. But on the positive side, our profile and statistics were visible, and it appears as though nothing was lost, well, except a profile pic. We were able to post on the mobile app and even see the site preview for the article we posted. But when going back to our profile to see how the post looked, it timed out. Update 5:27 p.m. Eastern. Of course, this was yesterday. Link preview now not working. Although barely usable, mobile only, I anxiously await re-engaging the Parler community. If you'd like to find us on Parler, go to this website. There's a link. We are at Conservative Daily News on Parler. And yeah, so Parler's back. And it has a whole new CEO, which I'm familiar with. He is interim. He is Mark Meckler of the Convention of States, and there's this article from the Epoch Times in regards to that. There's also one from National Review that I'll get to soon, but it says, Relaunched Parler's free speech vision is more entrenched than ever before. This from the CEO, and this from the Epoch Times. The official relaunch of the social media platform Parler carries forward the company's vision of being a space that protects free speech in a way that is more firm and entrenched than ever before. Interim Chief Executive Mark Meckler told the Epoch Times, Parler is back up online, and from our perspective, very healthy and robust. We don't answer anymore to the big tech oligarchy. We run robust, sustainable, totally independent technology from big tech. Meckler said on February 15, the day the platform resumed service, and just over a month after the site was suspended from Amazon Web Services servers. Meckler, an attorney and entrepreneur, hasn't yet disclosed which service provider is hosting Parler, but said in a release hours earlier that the company has now shifted to a new server farm. Parler's relaunch is intended to bring it back online for its current users only in the first week, with new users being able to sign up starting the following week. Meckler became Parler's interim CEO after his predecessor, John Matz, was terminated on January 29th by the company's board, which is controlled by Rebecca Mercer, the daughter of hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer. Describing himself as a warrior for free speech and advocate of the First Amendment, Meckler said that he didn't initially plan to become involved, but contacted Mercer to ask if he could help out behind the scenes. That's how I got involved initially. I just started helping behind the scenes and ultimately ended up in this position where I'm interim CEO. The plan is to bring in a new CEO eventually and just transfer over operations, he told the Epoch Times. Parler is intended to be the platform for free speech and a platform that values privacy and data sovereignty and promotes civil discourse. And I think that's the same as it's always been. If anything, that vision is just more firm and entrenched than ever before, he said, explaining the company's vision going forward. It is intended to be a platform for everybody. Nobody is going to be censored here at Parler. And we encourage people of all political stripes to come in and engage in the discussion. What we're looking for is civil discourse. The term parler actually means people who are in conflict coming together and having a conversation. And that's what we intend, and that's what we hope happens here at Parler. Days after former President Donald Trump was suspended from Google and Twitter, Parler was removed from Google's and Apple's app stores. Later, its hosting service agreement with Amazon was terminated. Amazon accused Parler of improperly moderating the platform. Parler has since filed a lawsuit against Amazon, arguing that it violated antitrust laws and colluded with other big tech firms to deplatform the website. That overarching case hasn't yet been ruled on. Meckler said the company has now looked ahead and built around a lot of the vulnerabilities that had existed previously. In the event of another attack on the platform, what we've done now is we're on independent platforms, we've got redundancy, so we hope and pray that even in the event of an attack, we're going to stay up and be robust, he said. So we've learned from that, and that was probably the one thing that I think is very different today is those redundancies just didn't exist in the past. Parler's interim CEO said he believes the company was seen by big tech as a threat, both to their control of speech and to their business models. Parler, unlike the other platforms, doesn't view our users as a commodity, Meckler said. We don't monetize their data, and we're building a successful business model. That's a threat to them, so it's both about speech they don't like and free market competition. The platform is stable and secure, and they're, meaning users, going to see their performance get better every single day. We're just excited to have everybody back. We're going to stand for free speech, even when it seems like the rest of the online universe will not. And I, for one, am glad that Parler is back. As a matter of fact, that is one of my main go-to sites, and I dropped a link to my social media contact information down below in the description area. So if you want to follow me on there on any social media, MeWe, Parler, MegaHive, MegaBook, and a few others, including Facebook and Twitter. You can find me there. And William Jacobson has a very interesting piece on Parler from Legal Insurrection. So, it says very simply, Parler is back. This will be one of the perhaps the first great victories over the big tech oligopolies that control so much of our lives. Despite the attempts of the cabal of Amazon Web Services, Google, Apple, and many other high-tech monsters to take it down, Parler has been brought back to life. It's unclear if Parler is completely back, but I just logged in and the Legal Insurrection page is up and running, and we still have almost 400,000 followers. Our prior parleys have not populated yet, but I assume that will take time. The prior Parler app on my phone still doesn't work. If it holds, this will be one of perhaps the first great victory over the big tech oligopolies that control so much of our lives. Parler was falsely blamed as being the hub on which the Capitol Hill riot was planned, but examination of DOJ indictments showed that Facebook and to a lesser extent Twitter were the central hubs, yet no one shut them down. Fuzzies cover the findings, and Parler vindicated. Study finds Facebook far and away most used social media by Capitol Hill rioters. Parler was shut down because it was viewed as a place for Trump supporters. The rest of the excuses were pretext. It comes none too soon as media and leftist hypes were relishing the thought of Parler being gone for good. Updates are slowly coming back via Just the News. Parler moved to a new computer server farm and the 20 million users on the platform when Amazon Web Services shut off the social media platform on January 11. Can begin using their old app and logins Monday, interim CEO Mark Meckler told Just the News. Some existing users were already live on Monday morning, and the rest should have access by midday after the new servers propagated across the internet. New users should be able to sign up for the service within a week or so, Meckler said. We are off of the big tech problem, so that we can consider ourselves safe and secure for the future, Meckler said in an interview. Meckler said the platform is using artificial intelligence and human editors to police for illegal speech that violates its service agreement, but otherwise is remaining true to its free speech, no censorship roots. Cancel culture came for us and hit us with all they had, yet we couldn't be kept down. We're back and we're ready to resume the struggle for freedom of expression, data sovereignty, and civil discourse. We thank our users for their loyalty during this incredibly challenging time, said Dan Bongino, a prominent Parler user and stockholder. This update at 10:30. Parler just sent out a media press release with the following. Parler relaunches a new platform. With over 20 million users, world's #1 free speech social media company returns with the platform designed on sustainable, independent technology and guided by new leadership. Dateline Henderson, Nevada, Parler, the world's #1 free speech social media platform with over 20 million users, is announcing its official relaunch today. Built on sustainable, independent technology and not relying on so-called big tech for its operations. Parler's relaunch, open to Americans of all viewpoints, is available immediately. Parler was built to offer a social media platform that protects free speech and values privacy and civil discourse. When Parler was taken offline in January by those who desired to silence tens of millions of Americans, our team came together determined to keep our promise to our highly engaged community that we would return stronger than ever. We're thrilled to welcome everyone back, said Mark Meckler, interim CEO at Parler. Parler is being run by an experienced team and is here to stay. We will thrive as a premier social media platform dedicated to free speech, privacy, and civil dialogue. Parler facts. Parler was first launched in August of 2018 and was taken offline by AWS on January 10, 2021. Parler relaunched on 2015-2021. Parler's new platform is built on robust, sustainable, independent technology. Parler's launch is intended to bring it back online with its current users only in the first week, with new users being able to sign up starting the following week. Parler's executive committee is conducting a thorough search for a permanent CEO to lead Parler as it continues to grow and expand its reach and impact. Mark Meckler is the interim CEO of Parler, and Amy Peikoff is the Chief Policy Officer of Parler. About interim CEO Mark Meckler. Mark Meckler is an attorney, entrepreneur, and free speech advocate. He has expertise in launching, growing, and developing effective business and technology models for two of the largest grassroots organizations in modern American history, Tea Party Patriots and Convention of States. He was appointed interim CEO to help guide Parler through its relaunch and search for a new permanent CEO. And I know Mark Meckler, so you know that he's going to bring everything around and basically just make things really grow with that. And of course, there's this article from National Review on Parler relaunching with new CEO after being kicked off Amazon Web Services. The site or social media platform Parler has relaunched after more than a month offline, the company announced Monday. The site was suspended by Amazon's cloud hosting service, Amazon Web Services, on January 9, 3 days after the violence riot at the Capitol, and went offline the next day. The company had drawn criticism for failing to regulate posts calling for violence and was reportedly used by some Trump supporters to coordinate the Stop the Steal campaign. Amazon's move came after Apple suspended Parler from its App Store, despite the Parler app surging to the top spot in free apps earlier in the day. Google also suspended Parler from its Google Play App Store. Amazon claims Parler was suspended for failing to delete accounts that were making threats of violence, but Parler maintains it took the accounts down as quickly as possible. The upstart social media platform had gained users attracted to its promise of free speech. Parler announced that it was no longer working with big tech and was instead built on sustainable, independent technology. The company also announced an interim CEO, Mark Meckler, who co-founded the right-wing group, the Tea Party Patriots. Parler terminated its former CEO, John Matz, earlier this month. Parler was built to offer a social media platform that protects free speech and values privacy and civil discourse, Meckler said in a statement Monday. When Parler was taken offline in January by those who desire to silence tens of millions of Americans, our team came together determined to keep our promise to our highly engaged community that we would engage or return stronger than ever. He said, we are thrilled to welcome everyone back. Meckler said that Parler is being run by an experienced team and is here to stay. Parler first launched in August 2018 and now has more than 20 million users. When user accounts have carried over, old parlays or posts do not appear to have transferred. And that's the article there. So yeah, so it's good that Parler's back. You know, the more social media networks out there that you know, to challenge the big three, so to speak, of Facebook, Google, and Twitter, the better, because no one should have a monopoly. You know, I mean, and so yeah, so leave a comment below what you think of Parler. Also leave a comment. If you are on Parler, you know, leave your Parler information below so I can follow you. My information is in my contacts link, which I have down in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. 1 month after the deadly attack on the Capitol building on January 6th, Nancy Pelosi now wants an independent commission, kind of like the one that occurred after 9/11, to investigate what really happened. This coming from humanevents.com. Pelosi unveils 9/11 style commission to investigate January 6th. After failing to disclose any information regarding the unrest at the Capitol on January 6th thus far, Nancy Pelosi revealed Monday that the House will establish an independent commission to investigate what really happened. Despite baseless accusations against President Trump without any evidence of conspiracy, the commission will be similar to the one that studied the devastating 9/11 attacks for 15 months before releasing a whopping 585-page report, according to the Washington Post. 2 days after Trump was acquitted by the Senate in a frivolous and wasteful impeachment trial, Pelosi wrote in a letter to House Democrats disclosing that there would soon be a legislation to consider forming the commission to investigate and report on the attack and interference in election proceedings, as well as an appropriation to beef up security on the Capitol grounds. Now, as always, security is the order of the day. The security of our country, the security of the Capitol, which is a temple of our democracy, and the security of our members, Pelosi said in the letter. Retired Army General Russell Honore, who Pelosi called on to assess security following the unrest, indicated in the report that there should be increased safety measures, Pelosi said. It is clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth about how this happened, she wrote. She added that Congress must also allocate additional funding to provide for the safety of members and the security of the Capitol. We will be forever grateful to the Capitol Police for their life-saving courage and heroism in securing the Capitol and protecting members, she wrote. The letter came as multiple committees in Congress prepared to schedule hearings, during which they will question the leaders of agencies involved in preparing for and responding to the unrest. By the way, Nancy Pelosi is one of those leaders. Lawmakers in both parties have spoken out in favor of an independent investigation modeled after that of the 9/11 terrorist attacks established in 2002 by Congress and President George W. Bush. Senator Lindsey Graham, who voted to acquit President Trump, said he wants to know more about what congressional leaders knew at the time of the unrest. We need a 9/11 commission to find out what happened and make sure it never happens again, he said in a Fox News interview. Senator Bill Cassidy, who was one of the Beltway 7 that voted to convict Trump, urged that there were many unanswered questions. Why was there not more law enforcement, National Guard already mobilized? What was known, who knew it, and when they knew it? All that because it builds on the basis so this never happens again in the future, he said in an ABC News interview. Representative Madeleine Dean, a Democrat House impeachment manager, expressed similar desires. Of course, there must be a full commission, an impartial commission, not guided by politics, but filled by people who would stand up to the courage of their conviction, like Dr. Cassidy, she said in an ABC News interview. Now, I happen to agree that there should be a commission to set up to investigate this, because I mean, there are a lot of missing pieces in this, and there are a lot of things that many who had dug into some of the videos and things on what would happen on January 6th. They're thinking that there's far more to this than meets the eye. So I'm all for this. And as a matter of fact, there's an article from BizPack Review which says Pelosi announces independent 9/11 Star Commission to probe Capitol riots as the GOP questions her role. Just when you thought the unsuccessful effort to remove former President Donald Trump from an office he no longer held signaled a merciful end to the Democrat Party's political theater, Speaker Nancy Pelosi strikes again. In a move that will drag out into perpetuity the party's efforts to capitalize on last month's assault on the U.S. Capitol, the California Democrat announced the House form an independent 9/11 type commission to investigate the incident, as if the Justice Department can manage such a task. Pelosi continues to wield the tragic incident like a club to beat the Republican Party over the head, and perhaps more importantly, bring further damage to the image of Donald Trump. It would seem Democrats' greatest fear is that Trump may run again in 2024, as the motivation behind their failed impeachment was widely believed to be to bar the former president from seeking office a second time. It is clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth about how this happened, Pelosi said in a letter to her Democrat colleagues. Describing the storming of the Capitol as a domestic terrorist attack, the Speaker billed it as an interference with the peaceful transfer of power. To protect our security, our next step will be to establish an outside independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack upon the U.S. Capitol complex and relating to the interference with the peaceful transfer of power, including facts and causes relating to the preparedness and response of the United States Capitol Police and other federal, state, and local law enforcement in the National Capital Region, the letter said. With Trump being acquitted in the Senate over the weekend, it's interesting that the Democrats' catchphrase insurrection was not utilized in the statement. Speaker Pelosi also called for more funding to bolster security for members. As we prepare for the commission, it is also clear from General Honora's interim reporting that we must put forth a supplemental appropriation to provide for the safety of members and the security of the Capitol, she said in the release. Retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore was tasked with leading a review of Capitol security last month by Pelosi. In the President's Day letter, the Speaker expressed gratitude to the Capitol Police for their life-saving courage and heroism in securing the Capitol and protecting members as she wrapped the partisan endeavor in the embrace America's greatest presidents. As we go forward, we must be worthy of the courage and wisdom of the patriarch of our country, George Washington, and the savior of our country, Abraham Lincoln, Pelosi continued. Democrat Senator Chris Coons of Delaware laid the groundwork for the announcement Sunday during an appearance on ABC's This Week, tying it all back to Trump. There's still more evidence that the American people need and deserve to hear, the senator said. The 9/11 Commission is a way to make sure that we secure the Capitol going forward and that we lay bare to record just how responsible and how abjectly and violating of his constitutional oath President Trump really was. Pelosi's letter to House to fellow Democrats followed a letter for House Republicans sent the Speaker earlier in the day, stating that the American people deserve answers to a few straightforward questions regarding the security of the Capitol on January 6th. Signed by Representatives Rodney Davis, Jim Jordan, James Comer, and Devin Nunes, all ranking members of their respective House committees. The letter questions Pelosi's role in any delay of deploying the National Guard troops ahead of the attack. 5 weeks have passed since the January 6th attack on the Capitol building, and many important questions about your responsibility for the security of the Capitol remain unanswered, the letter reads. 5 key questions are being asked here. 1. When then Chief Son made a request for National Guard support on January 4th, why was that request denied? 2. Did Sergeant of Arms Paul Irving get permission or instruction from your staff on January 4th prior to denying Chief Son's request for the National Guard? 3. What questions and what guidance did you and your staff give the Sergeant of Arms leading up to January 6th specific to the security posture of the campus? 4. What conversations did you have during the attack on the Capitol, and what response did you give security officials on January 6th when Chief Son requested National Guard support that required your approval? Number 5, why are your House officers refusing to comply with preservation and production requests to turn over request materials relevant to the events of January 6th? 5 very important questions that I say definitely need to be answered, and hopefully they will be soon. You know, one never knows what'll come out of all this, but I'm interested in finding out about it. And of course, we have Beth Bowman over at Town Hall stating that this is very rich and priceless. Townhall.com, how rich Pelosi now wants a 9/11 Select Commission to investigate the Capitol riots. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Monday penned a letter to her Democrat colleagues calling for a 9/11 type commission to investigate the January 6th riots at the Capitol. According to Pelosi, it's imperative to learn about what took place and whether or not the state and local governments were prepared before the attack. Dear Democrat colleagues, today we celebrate the birthdays of America's 2 greatest presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. George Washington was a patriarch of our country who with his courage fought for and won our independence at great odds, who with his wisdom then established our democracy, the greatest the world would ever see, and who with his prescience cautioned against political parties at war with their own government, warning that through parties cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government. Abraham Lincoln saved our country from division by winning a war in the Battle of Ideas. He wisely said that if division and destruction ever come to America, it will come from within. In his Lyceum address, he said, if danger ever reaches, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be allowed, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. Our country was blessed with the great patriotism of these presidents, and now we are grateful for the great patriotism of our impeachment managers, who under the leadership of Congressman Jamie Raskin, did an excellent job defending our democracy and honoring our Constitution. Now, as always, security is the order of the day. The security of our country, the security of our Capitol, which is the temple of our democracy, and the security of our members. Over the past few weeks, General Lenore has been assessing our security needs by reviewing what happened on January 6th and how we must ensure that it does not happen again. He has been working with committees of jurisdiction and will continue to make proposals. It is clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth about how this happened to protect our security, our security, our security. Our next step will be to establish an outside independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol complex and relating to the interference with the peaceful transfer of power including facts and causes relating to the preparedness and response of the United States Capitol Police and other federal, state, and local law enforcement in the National Capital Region. As we prepare for the commission, it is also clear from General Illinois' interim reporting that we must put forth a supplemental appropriation to provide for the safety of members and the security of the Capitol. We will be forever grateful to the Capitol Police for their life-saving courage and heroism in securing the Capitol and protecting members. I thank all of you, I thank those of you who have signed on as co-sponsors for the legislation honoring the Capitol Police and other law enforcement with the Congressional No Gold Medal, and I urge others to do so as well. As we go forward, we must be worthy of the courage and wisdom of the patriarch of our country, George Washington, and the savior of our country, Abraham Lincoln. Thank you for your courage and patriotism. Best wishes. Of course, Pelosi calls for this investigation after the disastrous impeachment trial. The House didn't do any sort of investigating before they impeached former President Donald Trump. That became apparent during the impeachment trial, especially when House impeachment lead Democrat Jamie Raskin of Maryland called for witnesses. He wanted to hear testimony that would make the House's case. The problem, however, is the investigation should have happened before an article of impeachment was brought against Trump. What's sad is that it took a strike at the Constitution for the Speaker to realize a fatal mistake. And I mean, that is basically spot on by Beth Bowman over at Town Hall. And I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Biden said. By the way, I had read an article on from the USA Today that Biden is in support of it. I just didn't put it in this stack because sometimes because I already had a BizPack review article, so I might put it in tomorrow's, or I might get to it on Friday, who knows, but depending on how the news swings. Actually, maybe not tomorrow because I'm going to be doing a special tribute. Breaking news, Rush Limbaugh had sadly passed away today. So I'm going to dedicate tomorrow's video to him. So, but yeah, I mean, Rush Limbaugh was a good man, and he inspired my hero, Andrew Breitbart. So, two great men who died within almost 10 years of each other, or rather 9 years of each other. And yeah, I mean, it's sad, and I'll get more into that tomorrow. But continuing with the article on the commission, we have this from the UPI by Daniel Uria, where it says Pelosi announces plans for a commission investigating Capitol riot. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Monday announced plans to launch an independent commission to investigate the January 6th riot at the Capitol. In a letter to lawmakers, Pelosi, Democrat of California, said that an assessment of congressional security by a retired Army Lieutenant General Russell Limbaugh in the wake of the insurrection has presented a necessity to get to the truth of how this happened. To protect our security, our next step will be to establish an outside independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack upon the U.S. Capitol complex, he said. Pelosi had previously called to establish a 9/11 type commission to probe and report the causes and security failures that made it possible for a mob of supporters of former President Donald Trump to breach the Capitol building as lawmakers certified President Joe Biden's November election win. The new call on Monday comes after Trump was acquitted on charges of inciting an insurrection in a 57-43 vote that saw 7 Republicans join Democrats in voting to convict, but fell short of the 67 votes needed to secure a conviction. On Sunday, House Impeachment Manager, Democrat Representative Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania, Democrat Senator Chris Coons of Delaware and Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who voted to convict Trump, expressed support for the creation of an independent commission. In a news conference earlier this month, Pelosi told reporters that House members would not serve on the commission and it would place an increased focus on diversity. Different from 9/11, but with 9 people, all white, 1 woman, it will look different, she said. I'm looking forward to seeing just what type of people Pelosi has on that. And leave a comment below as to what you think about Pelosi wanting an independent 9/11 type commission to investigate the terror, or to investigate the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. And I'll see you in tomorrow's video where I will honor the godfather of talk radio, Rush Limbaugh. 1 month after the deadly attack on the Capitol building on January 6th, Nancy Pelosi now wants an independent commission, kind of like the one that occurred after 9/11, to investigate what really happened. This coming from humanevents.com. Pelosi unveils 9/11 style commission to investigate January 6th. After failing to disclose any information regarding the unrest at the Capitol on January 6th thus far, Nancy Pelosi revealed Monday that the House will establish an independent commission to investigate what really happened. Despite baseless accusations against President Trump without any evidence of conspiracy, the commission will be similar to the one that studied the devastating 9/11 attacks for 15 months before releasing a whopping 585-page report, according to the Washington Post. 2 days after Trump was acquitted by the Senate in a frivolous and wasteful impeachment trial, Pelosi wrote in a letter to House Democrats disclosing that there would soon be legislation to consider forming the commission to investigate and report on the attack and interference in election proceedings, as well as an appropriation to beef up security on the Capitol grounds. Now, as always, security is the order of the day. The security of our country, the security of the Capitol, which is a temple of our democracy, and the security of our members, Pelosi said in the letter. Retired Army General Russell Honore, who Pelosi called on to assess security following the unrest, indicated in the report that there should be increased safety measures, Pelosi said. It is clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth about how this happened, she wrote. She added that Congress must also allocate additional funding to provide for the safety of members and the security of the Capitol. We will be forever grateful to the Capitol Police for their life-saving courage and heroism in securing the Capitol and protecting members, she wrote. The letter came as multiple committees in Congress prepare to schedule hearings, during which they will question the leaders of agencies involved in preparing for and responding to the unrest. By the way, Nancy Pelosi is one of those leaders. Lawmakers in both parties have spoken out in favor of an independent investigation modeled after that of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, established in 2002 by Congress and President George W. Bush. Senator Lindsey Graham, who voted to acquit President Trump, said he wants to know more about what congressional leaders knew at the time of the unrest. We need a 9/11 commission to find out what happened and make sure it never happens again, he said in a Fox News interview. Senator Bill Cassidy, who was one of the Beltway 7 that voted to convict Trump, urged that there were many unanswered questions. Why was there not more law enforcement, National Guard already mobilized? What was known, who knew it, and when they knew it? All that because it builds on the basis so this never happens again in the future, he said in an ABC News interview. Representative Madeleine Dean, a Democrat House impeachment manager, expressed similar desires. Of course, there must be a full commission, an impartial commission, not guided by politics, but filled by people who would stand up to the courage of their conviction, like Dr. Cassidy, she said in an ABC News interview. Now, I happen to agree that there should be a commission to set up to investigate this, because I mean, there are a lot of missing pieces in this, and there were a lot of things that many who had who had dug into some of the videos and things on on what would happen on January 6th. They're thinking that there's far more to this than meets the eye. So I'm all for this. And as a matter of fact, there's an article from BizPack Review which says Pelosi announces independent 9/11 Stock Commission to probe Capitol riots as the GOP questions her role. Just when you thought the unsuccessful effort to remove former President Donald Trump from an office he no longer held signaled a merciful end to the Democrat Party's political theater, Speaker Nancy Pelosi strikes again. In a move that will drag out into perpetuity the party's efforts to capitalize on last month's assault on the U.S. Capitol, the California Democrat announced the House form an independent 9/11 type commission to investigate the incident, as if the Justice Department can manage such a task. Pelosi continues to wield the tragic incident like a club to beat the Republican Party over the head, and perhaps more importantly, bring further damage to the image of Donald Trump. It would seem Democrats' greatest fear is that Trump may run again in 2024, as the motivation behind their failed impeachment was widely believed to be to bar the former president from seeking office a second time. It is clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth about how this happened, Pelosi said in a letter to her Democrat colleagues. Describing the storming of the Capitol as a domestic terrorist attack, the Speaker billed it as an interference with the peaceful transfer of power. To protect our security, our next step will be to establish an outside independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack upon the U.S. Capitol complex and relating to the interference with the peaceful transfer of power, including facts and causes relating to the preparedness and response of the United States Capitol Police and other federal, state, and local law enforcement in the National Capital Region, the letter said. With Trump being acquitted in the Senate over the weekend, it's interesting that the Democrats' catchphrase insurrection was not utilized in the statement. Speaker Pelosi also called for more funding to bolster security for members. As we prepare for the commission, it is also clear from General Honor's interim reporting that we must put forth a supplemental appropriation to provide for the safety of members and the security of the Capitol, she said in the release. Retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore was tasked with leading a review of Capitol security last month by Pelosi. In the President's Day letter, the Speaker expressed gratitude to the Capitol Police for their life-saving courage and heroism in securing the Capitol and protecting members as she wrapped the partisan endeavor in the embrace of America's greatest presidents. As we go forward, we must be worthy of the courage and wisdom of the patriarch of our country, George Washington, and the savior of our country, Abraham Lincoln, Pelosi continued. Democrat Senator Chris Coons of Delaware laid the groundwork for the announcement Sunday during an appearance on ABC's This Week, tying it all back to Trump. There's still more evidence that the American people need and deserve to hear, the senator said. The 9/11 Commission is a way to make sure that we secure the Capitol going forward and that we lay bare to record just how responsible and how abjectly and violating of his constitutional oath President Trump really was. Pelosi's letter to fellow Democrats followed a letter for House Republicans sent the Speaker earlier in the day, stating that the American people deserve answers to a few straightforward questions regarding the security of the Capitol on January 6th. Signed by Representatives Rodney Davis, Jim Jordan, James Comer, and Devin Nunes, all ranking members of their respective House committees. The letter questions Pelosi's role in any delay of deploying the National Guard troops ahead of the attack. 5 weeks have passed since the January 6th attack on the Capitol building, and many important questions about your responsibility for the security of the Capitol remain unanswered, the letter reads. 5 key questions are being asked here. 1. When then Chief Son made a request for National Guard support on January 4th, why was that request denied? 2. Did Sergeant of Arms Paul Irving get permission or instruction from your staff on January 4th prior to denying Chief Sun's request for the National Guard? 3. What questions and what guidance did you and your staff give the Sergeant of Arms leading up to January 6th specific to the security posture of the campus? 4. What conversations did you have during the attack on the Capitol, and what response did you give security officials on January 6th when Chief Sun requested National Guard support that required your approval? Number 5. Why are your House officers refusing to comply with preservation and production requests to turn over request materials relevant to the events of January 6th? 5 very important questions that I say definitely need to be answered, and hopefully they will be soon. You know, one never knows what'll come out of all this, but I'm interested in finding out about it. And of course, we have Beth Bowman over at Town Hall stating that this is very rich and priceless. Townhall.com, how rich Pelosi now wants a 9/11 Commission to investigate the Capitol riots. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Monday penned a letter to her Democrat colleagues calling for a 9/11 type commission to investigate the January 6th riots at the Capitol. According to Pelosi, it's imperative to learn about what took place and whether or not the state and local governments were prepared before the attack. Dear Democrat colleagues, today we celebrate the birthdays of America's two greatest presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. George Washington was a patriarch of our country, who with his courage fought for and won our independence at great odds, who with his wisdom then established our democracy, the greatest the world would ever see, and who with his prescience cautioned against political parties at war with their own government, warning that through parties, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government. Abraham Lincoln saved our country from division by winning a war in the Battle of Ideas. He wisely said that if division and destruction ever come to America, it will come from within. In his Lyceum address, he said, "If danger ever reaches, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be allowed, we must ourselves be its author and finisher." Our country was blessed with the great patriotism of these presidents, and now we are grateful for the great patriotism of our impeachment managers, who under the leadership of Congressman Jamie Raskin, did an excellent job defending our democracy and honoring our Constitution. Now, as always, security is the order of the day. The security of our country, the security of our capital, which is the temple of our democracy, and the security of our members. Over the past few weeks, General Honore has been assessing our security needs by reviewing what happened on January 6th and how we must ensure that it does not happen again. He has been working with committees of jurisdiction and will continue to make proposals. It is clear from his findings and from the impeachment trial that we must get to the truth about how this happened to protect our security, our security, our security. Our next step will be to establish an outside independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol complex and relating to the interference with the peaceful transfer of power, including facts and causes relating to the preparedness and response of the United States Capitol Police and other federal, state, and local law enforcement in the National Capital Region. As we prepare for the commission, it is also clear from General Honore's interim reporting that we must put forth a supplemental appropriation to provide for the safety of members and the security of the Capitol. We will be forever grateful to the Capitol Police for their life-saving courage and heroism in securing the Capitol and protecting members. I thank all of you, I thank those of you who have signed on as co-sponsors for the legislation honoring the Capitol Police and other law enforcement with the Congressional No Gold Medal, and I urge others to do so as well. As we go forward, we must be worthy of the courage and wisdom of the patriarch of our country, George Washington, and the savior of our country, Abraham Lincoln. Thank you for your courage and patriotism. Best wishes. Of course, Pelosi calls for this investigation after the disastrous impeachment trial. The House didn't do any sort of investigating before they impeached former President Donald Trump. That became apparent during the impeachment trial, especially when House impeachment lead Democrat Jamie Raskin of Maryland called for witnesses. He wanted to hear testimony that would make the House's case. The problem, however, is the investigation should have happened before an article of impeachment was brought against Trump. What's sad is that it took a strike at the Constitution for the Speaker to realize a fatal mistake. And I mean, that is basically spot on by Beth Bowman over at Town Hall. And I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Biden said. By the way, I had read an article on from the USA Today that Biden is in support of it. I just didn't put it in this stack because sometimes because I already had a BizPack review article, so I might put it in tomorrow's, or I might get to it on Friday, who knows, but depending on how the news swings. Actually, maybe not tomorrow because I'm going to be doing a special tribute. Breaking news, Rush Limbaugh had sadly passed away today. So I'm going to dedicate tomorrow's video to him. So, but yeah, I mean, Rush Limbaugh was a good man, and he inspired my hero, Andrew Breitbart. So, two great men who died within almost 10 years of each other, or rather 9 years of each other. And yeah, I mean, it's sad, and I'll get more into that tomorrow. But continuing with the article on the commission, we have this from the UPI by Daniel Uria, where it says Pelosi announces plans for a commission investigating Capitol riot. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Monday announced plans to launch an independent commission to investigate the January 6th riot at the Capitol. In a letter to lawmakers, Pelosi, Democrat of California, said that an assessment of congressional security by a retired Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore in the wake of the insurrection has presented a necessity to get to the truth of how this happened. To protect our security, our next step will be to establish an outside independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack upon the U.S. Capitol complex, he said. Pelosi had previously called to establish a 9/11 type commission to probe and report the causes and security failures that made it possible for a mob of supporters of former President Donald Trump to breach the Capitol building as lawmakers certified President Joe Biden's November election win. The new call on Monday comes after Trump was acquitted on charges of inciting an insurrection in a 57-43 vote that saw 7 Republicans join Democrats in voting to convict, but fell short of the 67 votes needed to secure a conviction. On Sunday, House Impeachment Manager, Democrat Representative Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania, Democrat Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, and Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who voted to convict Trump, expressed support for the creation of an independent commission. In a news conference earlier this month, Pelosi told reporters that House members would not serve on the commission and it would place an increased focus on diversity. Different from 9/11, but with 9 people, all white, 1 woman, it will look different, she said. I'm looking forward to seeing just what type of people Pelosi has on that. And leave a comment below as to what you think about Pelosi wanting an independent 9/11 type commission to investigate the terror, or to investigate the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. And I'll see you in tomorrow's video where I will honor the godfather of talk radio. Rush Limbaugh. There are two sad days in media history. One is March 1st, 2012, when Andrew Breitbart had died from a heart attack. And the other one was just yesterday, as the godfather of talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, had passed away as well. I'll get into more about how Rush Limbaugh and Andrew Breitbart are connected later on in this video, but let's go right to the AP. It says, Rush Limbaugh, radio king and architect of right-wing dies. Rush Limbaugh called himself a truth detector, doctor of democracy, lover of mankind, all-around guy and harmless fuzzball, titles his nations of followers embraced as he boomed from their radios on a daily ritual. To those who hated him, the names he conjured were often unfit for print. Such was the nature of Limbaugh, who died of lung cancer Wednesday at the age of 70. Prized by adherents as the voice of conservatism, pilloried by critics as the worst of American politics' extreme right wing. He was divisive to the very end, but it did little to diminish his importance as the dominant force of talk radio, one of the most influential voices in American politics, and an architect of the modern right wing. Unflinchingly conservative, wildly partisan, bombastically self-promoting and larger than life, Limbaugh had for the past quarter century galvanized listeners with his politically incorrect, sarcasm-laced commentary. He called himself an entertainer, but with his 3-hour weekday talk show broadcast on nearly 600 stations across the U.S. and a massive audience of millions hanging on his every word, Limbaugh's rants shaped the national political conversation, swaying the minds of average Republicans in the direction of the party. He drew people in with his wit, his sense of the theatrical, and a made-for-broadcast voice, offering listeners a blueprint for what he saw as the grand scheme of the opposition. And he did it with such unyielding confidence, his followers heard his words as sacred truth. I want to persuade people with ideas. I don't walk around thinking about my power, he told author Zev Chevitz in his 2010 book, Rush Limbaugh, An Army of One. But in my heart and soul, I know I have become the intellectual engine of the conservative movement. Limbaugh took as a badge of honor the title of most dangerous man in America and called himself America's anchorman. But his assessments of those with whom he disagreed were not nearly so kind. He called them communists, wackos, feminazis, faggots, and radicals, and he would spare none of them. When the actor Michael J. Fox, suffering from Parkinson's disease, appeared in a commercial for a Democrat, Limbaugh mocked him for his tremors. When a Washington advocate for the homeless committed suicide, he cracked a string of jokes. As the AIDS epidemic raged in the 1980s, he made the dying a punchline. To him, 12-year-old Chelsea Clinton was a dog. When the topic was reproductive rights, he didn't simply voice a pro-life stance. He suggested democratic ideology in the biblical times would have led to the abortion of Jesus Christ. When a woman accused Duke University lacrosse players of rape, she was derided as a hoe. And when a Georgetown University law student spoke in support of expanded contraceptive coverage, she was dismissed as dull. When Barack Obama won the presidency in 2008, despite all Limbaugh's warnings, he didn't simply voice regret. He said, I hope he fails. And with the ugly scenes of a mob insurrection last month at the Capitol still fresh, he was dismissive to calls for an end to violence, comparing the rioters instead were American revolutionaries. There are people out there calling for the end of violence who say that any violence or aggression at all is unacceptable, irregardless of the circumstances. He said the day after the insurrection. I am glad Sam Adams, Thomas Jefferson, the actual Tea Party guys, the men at Lexington and Concord didn't feel that way. For all the controversy he embodied, he remained a GOP kingmaker. His idol, Ronald Reagan, wrote a letter of praise that Limbaugh probably read on the air in 1992. You become the #1 voice for conservatism. In 1994, Limbaugh was so widely credited with the first Republican takeover of Congress In 40 years that the GOP made him an honorary member of the new class. During the 2016 presidential primaries, Limbaugh said he realized early on that Trump would be the nominee, and he likened the candidate's deep connection with his supporters to his own. And Trump, in turn, he praised on Limbaugh, and during last year's State of the Union speech, awarded the broadcaster the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. As news of Limbaugh's death spread, Trump took to Fox News Channel to laud a man he deemed a legend, as tributes poured in from across the American right. The supernova of American conservatism heralded and culture. Limbaugh inspired the likes of Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, and Bill O'Reilly, and countless lesser-known people who established conservative radio shows in their markets. They followed too in pushing the bounds of civil dialogue. The brand of blunt, no gray area debate that Limbaugh popularized spread from cable television to congressional town hall meetings, from voracious debates over healthcare to the rallies of the Tea Party movement. What he did was to bring a paranoia and did really mean nasty rhetoric and hyperpartisanship into the mainstream, said Martin Kaplan, a University of South Carolina professor and expert on the intersection of politics and entertainment, who was a frequent Limbaugh critic. The kind of antagonism and vituperativeness that characterized him instantly became acceptable everywhere. Such criticism echoed again and again in his lifetime, but Limbaugh seemed only to push further, assembling an ever-growing list of those branded enemies, of the values the public was purportedly being fooled on, and the lies the mainstream media was supposedly feeding. He offered a litany of it all to his listeners, as he did in the 1991 broadcast he heavily quotes in his first book, The Way Things Ought to Be. In a single episode and in one breath this segment, he railed against the homeless, AIDS patients, criticism of Christopher Columbus, aid to the Soviet Union, condoms in schools, animal rights activists, multiculturalism, the social safety net, and on and on. Though he often enunciated the Republican platform better and more entertainingly than any party leader, he was an imperfect spokesman. Limbaugh was a portly, cigar-smoking multimillionaire who drew his massive following with his message and affability. He came with a checkered personal life that repeatedly put him in headlines. In 2003, Limbaugh admitted to an addiction to painkillers and entered rehabilitation. All authorities opened an investigation into alleged doctor shopping, saying he received up to 2,000 pills from 4 doctors over a period of 6 months. But he ultimately reached a deal with prosecutors that dismissed the single charge. He was divorced 3 times from marriages to Roxy Maxine McNeely in 1997, Michelle Sixta in 1993, and Meta Fitzgerald in 1994. He married his 4th wife, Kathryn Rogers, in a lavish 2010 ceremony. He had no children. Limbaugh was frequently accused of bigotry and blatant racism through his comments and sketches, such as Barack the Magic Negro, a song featured on a show that said Obama makes guilty whites feel good, and that the politician is black but not authentically. Similar race-fueled events or comments derailed Limbaugh's 2009 bid to become one of the owners of the St. Louis Rams. Through it all, though, his message remained crystal clear. Key to his monologue was a constant belittling of mainstream media outlets. Even as his power grew greater than many of them, he offered a version of the news that was easy to digest, in which his side was truthful and right and all of the others were liars hell-bent on destroying the country. He strung stories together to portray what amounted to elaborate left-wing conspiracies. To Limbaugh, his opponents relied on half-truths, bias, and outright lies, the very same combination others would say was his magic formula. In his second best-selling book, See, I Told You So, he assessed the political debate generated by the mainstream press in a way his critics said were actually Limbaugh's own modus operandi. Lies have become facts, he wrote, lies are facts. Rush Limbaugh III was born January 12, 1951 in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, to the former Mildred Armstrong and Rush Limbaugh Jr., who flew foreign fighter planes in World War II and practiced law at home. Rusty, as the younger Limbaugh was known, was chubby and shy, with little interest in school, but from a young age a passion for broadcasting. He turned down the volume during St. Louis Cardinals games, offering play-by-play and gave winning commentary during the evening news. By high school, he was already working in radio. Limbaugh dropped out of Southeast Missouri State University for a string of radio jobs from his hometown to McKeesport, Pennsylvania, to Pittsburgh, and then Kansas City, Missouri. He was known as Rusty Sharp and then Jeff Christie on the air, mostly spinning top 40 hits and sprinkling in glimpses of his wit and conservatism, but he never gained the following he craved. He admitted he was often driven by a desire to be liked, even though his pulpit grew hatred as much as love. One of the early reasons radio interested me was that I thought it would make me popular. I wanted to be noticed and liked, he wrote. He gave up radio for several years, beginning in 1979 to take a front office job with the Kansas City Royals, but ultimately returned to broadcasting again in Kansas City and then in Sacramento, California. It was in California in the early 1980s where Limbaugh really hit a stride and garnered an audience, broadcasting shows dripping with sarcasm, full of his signature bravado and reeling against liberals. The stage name was gone. Rush Limbaugh was on the air, and the public figure who would become known to millions essentially was born. Limbaugh began a national broadcast of his show in 1988 from WABC in New York. Heard in a smattering of markets around the country, his grandstanding know-it-all commentary quickly gained traction, but Limbaugh was dismayed by the reception in New York. He believed the movement he'd be welcomed by the likes of Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, and Dan Rather. He was wrong. I came to New York, he wrote, and I immediately became a nothing, a zero. He had a late-night television show in the 1990s which drew notable ratings, but lackluster advertising due to fear of his divisive message. The feelings he could stir were demonstrated when he filled in as host of the Pat Sajak show in 1990, when audience members called him a Nazi and repeatedly shouted, disrupting the broadcast. Ultimately, Limbaugh moved his radio show to Palm Beach, Florida, where he bought a massive estate. He told the New York Times in 2008 that his 8-year contract with Premier Radio Networks would bring him an estimated $38 million annually, in addition to a 9-figure signing bonus. As of 2012, Premier estimated up to 20 million people heard his broadcast each week. Arbitron, a radio ratings authority, said it couldn't verify that figure, but there is no question that no one came close to his reach or his influence. When Rush wants to talk to America, all he has to do is grab the microphone. He attracts more listeners with just his voice than the rest of us could ever imagine. Beck wrote in a 2009 article for Time magazine. He was simply on another level. Polls consistently found Limbaugh regarded as the voice of the Republican Party. His followers, whom he dubbed Bidowheads, were unwavering in their enthusiasm. Even when he was attacked by opponents who faced personal hurdles of his own. For all the criticism he received for his message, he was successful in large part for the certainty with which he delivered it, never questioning opinions he regarded as undeniable truth. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and just think to yourself, I'm just full of hot gas? He was asked by David Letterman in a 1993 appearance of The Late Show. I am a servant of humanity, he replied. I am in the relentless pursuit of the truth. I actually sit back and think that I'm just so fortunate to have this opportunity to tell people what's really going on. You know, one of Rush's claims is that he has talent unknown from God, which, I mean, we're all unknown from God anyway, as Rush pointed out in his book, The Way Things Ought to Be. But, I mean, there was just something about Rush that drew even me to him, even for a short time. You know, I mean, I remember back in early 93, I was with a group of people from church, and as one of them was taking me to school after a prayer breakfast, they had the local talk radio station on. I believe at the time it was 1240, and they had the Rush Limbaugh update. The person turned it up and asked me if I listened to Rush Limbaugh, and I was like, no. I listened to it, and then I was like, he's right. So I started listening to him a little more on my own, and I mean, Rush Limbaugh is the king of talk radio. I mean, I say he is. I say, to steal a phrase from Neil Boortz, he is the godfather of political talk radio, and he. Okay, there was one person who had called in to his show and got this from Deseret News. This first-time caller remembers Rush Limbaugh's radio legacy. This was Jennifer Graham. I was a first-time caller, and as it turned out, a last-time caller because my debut on national radio did not go well. I had called into the Rush Limbaugh show because he was making fun of Hillary Clinton. In particular, her assertion that daycare in the U.S. was a silent crisis, and I, a newly minted stay-at-home mom, knew much more about the subject than he did. It was 1997. America was 5 years into the Bill Clinton administration, 9 years into the nationally syndicated Rush Limbaugh show. Already he was a fixture of American life, albeit a polarizing one. He was, he said cheekily, the most dangerous man in America, and yet there he was on my 80-something grandmother's radio 5 days a week. In fact, she introduced me to her show. It was fitting then that I was at my grandmother's house the day I embarrassed myself on talk radio. Rush always said it was the caller's job to make the host look good, and I did my part. A week later, I wrote an essay about the experience, vaguely thinking of making some money, but mostly to lick my post-traumatic radio wounds. The essay wasn't published, though, until 5 years later, on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of the Limbaugh show, when Kathryn Jean Lopez of National Review Online picked it up. The silent crisis of a first-time caller described my panic at being thrust on the air with no preparation, and worse, being kept on through a commercial break. At the end of the conversation, in which Limbaugh looked very good indeed, he said to me, "You've been a good sport," which I later described as a cryptic adieu, notifying me that sometime in the past 5 minutes, I apparently was cruelly insulted. Limbaugh has frequently been described by by his critics, many of whom identify as liberals, yet in the hours after Limbaugh died of lung cancer at age 70 on Wednesday, Twitter curled with bile as haters recounted every offensive thing he has said in the past 33 years. To be fair, there were more than a few things to mention. But what the critics never understood about Rush Limbaugh was what he meant to people like my grandmother, someone who herself would never make fun of a child, Chelsea Clinton, or a college student, Sandra Fluck, but could look the other way when Limbaugh did. She wasn't bothered by the pressing controversies that so enraged Limbaugh's enemies and critics. She heard instead the day in, day out affirmations of the conservative values she espoused. And her voice, once described as a deep, chesty baritone, were matched by an oratorical style one might sooner expect to hear on the Shakespearean stage. She saw a kind heart in pursuit of a common good under the bombastic front. Limbaugh talked on the radio, but he was more than that. For millions of Americans, he was also background music, a comforting soundtrack that promised absolutes in the shifting sea of relatives, that boldly defined the way things ought to be, which was the title of his first book. As Christopher Bedford, a senior editor at The Federalist, wrote on Twitter today, if William F. Buckley drew the maps, Rush built the roads. Also forgotten in the vitriol was how unnamingly pleasant Limbaugh was, how old school polite, whether cheerfully skewering philandering presidents or stay-at-home moms who had nothing of value to say on a national radio show. He wrote to me after that essay was published, thanking me for writing it and saying, "I'm certain you were more cordial than you let on." For the record, I was not. And there's a scan of the letter where it says, "Jennifer Kalo at NRO gave me your email address so I could scribble you a quick note of thanks for the piece you posted today. It was hilarious. I've read it 3 or 4 times now about the age your kids were when they crashed your big showbiz break. If you remember the date or the approximate date of your appearance, you might be able to dig up the full transcript and see the totality of what happened. I'm certain you were more cogent than you let on. Again, thanks again. Great piece, and I appreciate it very, very much. So, all the best, Rush Limbaugh. Back to the article. Limbaugh understood his primary job was to entertain, and he crossed lines and didn't apologize. If he savaged a few liberals on the path he saw as the one who would save America, that was collateral damage in pursuit of his version of the conservative cause. What drove him was not money or fame. He kept going long after those were acquired. Even a public humiliation, the 2003 national revelation of a painkiller addiction that sent him to rehab, showed Limbaugh's popularity among a wide swath of Americans to be scandal-proof. It was because he was, as they always say in politics, on message. After 5 weeks in rehab, Limbaugh returned to the airwaves with a pitch-perfect beginning to the show. As I was saying, he said, signaling to both his fans and critics that his comic gifts were still intact. Limbaugh talked through 5 presidential administrations and through personal hardships, to include severe hearing loss that for a while left him practically deaf. Cochlear implants restored some of his hearing, although he couldn't hear music normally again. He was, in many ways, like the child's toy, sometimes called a wobbly man that you can't push over, that pops back to an upright position. You could not push him down or change his direction, which is one reason that Heritage Foundation Casey James once said, "I have used Rush Limbaugh as my true north for decades." Critics of Limbaugh have plenty to choose from when they look for words to demonize a man. It takes a lot of words to fill 15 hours of airtime for 33 years, and most of us would not want to be judged by the worst things we said in 1 month, let alone 3 decades. But in gleefully speculating on Limbaugh's prospects for the afterlife, the haters say as much about themselves as they do about him. In my essay, I quoted from the Leon H. Lawrence poem Snake, in which the narrator describes a clumsy encounter later regretted with a garden snake. And so I missed my chance with one of the Lords of Life, the narrator said. The haters will see Limbaugh as a snake, an author of derision and teller of lies, but in living rooms and kitchens across middle America, there will be a palpable void in the coming days and years. Limbaugh's fans can take heart in knowing that the ideals he expressed, those collected loosely under a banner called conservatism, are built around the idea that there is an eternal moral order, one not dependent on personalities or politics, but on right and wrong. You might call it the way things ought to be. As he was saying, I mean, you know, she just basically said everything right there, and she was a first-time caller. I admit that I tried calling into her show a few times, and all I got was an infuriating busy signal. But I just kept trying, and as a matter of fact, there was one point during the time that I had listened to Rush's show that I actually took notes of his show. Just basic highlighted points here and there that I thought were well worth reading again. And yeah, I mean, he was basically the gatekeeper, as is brought out by an article from Conservative Daily News and Frank Salvato. The passing of the gatekeeper, Rush Limbaugh, 1951 to 2021. It is with sincere condolences that I extend my thoughts and prayers to the Limbaugh family on the passing of Rush Limbaugh early morning on February 17, 2021. As their family, it almost seems intrusive to say that we all feel a stinging loss, but the fact is this, we do. If you're a conservative, a Republican, and even a libertarian, you recognized Rush as someone who spoke truth to power as he exposed the power to the everyman in an attempt to sound the alarm. If you are a Democrat or a progressive, you recognize Rush as a potent foe whom you were inclined to treat with respect and at the very least caution. If you're a conservative or a constitutionalist pundit or analyst, and especially if you are in the new or independent media, you recognize, as I do, that we owe a great debt to Rush because he blazed a trail in a usually closed-door boys' club. In the end, ironically, the boys' club needed him. As they say, the mountain came to Moses. Then there are the political talk show hosts, both on-air and podcasters, and not just conservative, constitutionalist, and libertarian podcasters either. Every political podcaster out there owes a debt of gratitude for what Rush accomplished over the years. He created the rubric for the genre, the intellectual clock for the show. But the communications aspect of his life was only one facet. In the end, Rush was a confidant and kitchen cabinet advisor to presidents and high-level political leaders in the conservative movement. He reached his plateau because he wasn't an ass-kisser. He spoke his mind and his opinions. His analysis of the situations were thought out to the end game, a rare ability inside the Beltway. I admit I have a unique perspective being someone who has a finger in all the pies above. But what makes my perspective on Rush one of great respect and admiration is the fact that I'm good friends with his first cousin Andy. In fact, he's my partner on a podcast. Through him, I've been afforded a fleeting glimpse of the integrity that runs throughout the Limbaugh family. The love of country, the respect for truth and honor, the duty to responsibility and obligation. It is an aspect of a very close and private family that Rush shared with his listeners in the country, and we are all better for it. Today, on the day of Rush's passing, my heartfelt and sincere condolences are with the Limbaugh family, both immediate and extended. I can say with certainty that his followers, his on-air family, are suffering a great loss, a void. And while the malcontents and disrespectful ideologues of the progressive and radical left spew their animosity during a time when they should be silent, what their hatred really acknowledges is their anxious exhale at the gatekeeper leaving the gate. Rush is leaving incredibly large shoes to fill, and those shoes come with an obligation to truth, to introspect, to communication, and to selflessness in the pursuit of freedom and the guarding of liberty. The task is weighty and not for the faint of heart. It requires dedication, devotion, and dignity. If we are to pick up the colors, we must understand the need to humble ourselves to a greater principle and the purity of the cause. The gatekeeper has left the watchtower. It is our turn at the watch. Yes, it is. I said it at the beginning of this, and I'll read a little bit, and I'll read a little more about it in a few minutes. To me, there were two gatekeepers. Rush Limbaugh was the senior gatekeeper, and one Andrew Breitbart was the junior gatekeeper. He was the one who basically just sat under the Rush Limbaugh learning tree, as we all did, and he was the one who just took that and just brought that into the new media, whether it be radio or print. And speaking of Breitbart, I have an article from Breitbart.com, and it says, Lefties mock Rush Limbaugh, celebrate passing with Rest in Piss by Joshua Klein. After the Wednesday passing of talk radio legend Rush Limbaugh, blue check leftists took to Twitter to bash and mock the conservative icon while rejoicing over his death, including driving the hashtag RestInPiss. Limbaugh, who hosted the Rush Limbaugh show for 32 years, has been battling stage 4 lung cancer since January 2020. Within minutes of the announcement of Limbaugh's death, leftist Twitter users took to the social media platform to mock his memory and criticize both him and his positions. Andrew Sarabian said, Rush Limbaugh passes away from cancer and Twitter lefties decide to trend this. Such nice people. Rush Limbaugh was a Nazi who delighted in the suffering of others, wrote producer and writer and producer Manny Molyneux. We do not mourn and we do not care. Rush Limbaugh was a crappy, cynical person who did everything he could to make the world meaner, dumber, and more divided. Wrote Andy Zeisler, writer and co-founder of the Portland-based feminist group Witch Media, or rhymes with Witch Media. I'm glad he's dead, and I wish it had happened a lot sooner. With hate peddling and conspiracy theories, Rush did more harm to the U.S. than just about anyone, wrote filmmaker and progressive activist Adam Best. Right-wingers are reacting to the news of Rush Limbaugh's death as if Mr. Rogers died, and that tells you exactly how delusional their bubble is, was another tweet from Mr. Best. Media mustn't pretend that he was anything than one of the most toxic right-wing liars who did more than any other media figure to harm in the rightist nation, wrote left-wing editor Alex Marash. Rush Limbaugh was a bigot and a misogynist who saturated America's airwaves with cruel lies and conspiracy theories for decades, transforming the GOP in the process, wrote senior HuffPost reporter Christopher Mathias. He also said, if you're going to read one obit, read HuffPost from me and Nick Robbins early. Rush Limbaugh was a coward and a white supremacist, wrote left-wing activist Charlotte Clymer. He aggressively and cynically exploited divisions in our country by weaponizing hatred and bigotry for his own personal gain. He was in service to his own greed, prejudice, and hypocrisy, and that is how history will remember him, she added. I really don't have any strong emotions at all about Rush Limbaugh dying, wrote Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox. He will be replaced by someone who is just as adept at stoking hate and resentment, and that person's success will give me confidence that the world will be exactly the same if Rush never lived. Every day when Rush Limbaugh got out of bed, he had pretty much one job: make the world a worse place. Wrote best-selling author Maureen Johnson. He made himself into a vortex. He caused tremendous amounts of suffering and poisoned people against their fellow humans. His life story is a cautionary tale, she added. Rush Limbaugh fostered a culture of mean-spiritedness that still poisons our politics and culture, wrote Tom Winter, a former Democrat member of the Montana House of Representatives. Don't do him the favor of perpetuating it. We've got bigger things to do than dance on that small man's grave, everyone, he added. Rush Limbaugh spent decades advancing his career by opportunistically spreading vicious lies that got a lot of bad people elected, whose corrupt policies in turn got a lot of Americans killed, wrote liberal political blog Palmer Report. Now he's dead, so be it. There's a reason RestInPiss is trending right now. There are so many things I could say about the death of Rush Limbaugh, but you're already thinking them and with better adjectives. Or Joe Hagan, a special correspondent for Vanity Fair. And I'll just stop there. I mean, it goes on, you know, with many expressing glee. And even some musicians are going at it, you know, I mean, and it says that while prominent conservative voices and masses of conservative users on social media platforms have been purged, with some reporting losing tens of thousands of followers, left-wing users have little reason to fear writing inflammatory tweets such as those celebrating Limbaugh's death. And that's what I mean. You know, I mean, it's like whenever somebody on the on the right-wing conservative side dies, the left is all glee and happy. Yet when somebody on the left dies, you don't see that amongst Republicans. No, they were, at least with many Republicans. I mean, there are a couple of Republicans out there that do that, but for the most part, Republicans are basically just say, you know, so and so had died. Let's just leave it at that. But I had brought up Andrew Breitbart. Okay, Breitbart was younger. He had lived in California, like, and he had he dated Susie Bean, who is the daughter of Orson Bean, who was an actor, comedian, and raconteur. In Andrew's book, Righteous Indignation, he said something which really stuck to me. Said, not only was I working in Hollywood, I was dating the daughter of Orson Bean, an actor, comedian, and raconteur, spending time at his house on the Venice Canals, which to this day I still call Dennis Kucinich bumper sticker country, where Clinton, Kerry, and Obama aren't left enough. I perused his bookshelves. Not only was I attracted to Susie, I was attracted to Orson's written depth of knowledge of everything. The guy had been on the Tonight Show's couch, seventh most of any guest. His opinion mattered to me. One day I asked him why he had Rush Limbaugh's book, The Way Things Ought to Be, on his shelf. I asked him, why would you have a book by this guy? And Orson said, have you ever listened to him? I said, yes, of course, even though I never had. I was convinced to the core of my being that Rush Limbaugh was a Nazi, anti-black, anti-Jewish, and anti-all things decent. Without berating me for disagreeing with him, Orson simply suggested that I listen to him again. And it went on to say that while Andrew was listening to Jim Rome and Howard Stern, the intensity of the 1992 election cycle warranted that he switched the frequency over to hearing about the horse race, and that's where his rendezvous with destiny begins. He continues. I turned on KFI 6:40 a.m. to listen to Evil Personified from 9 a.m. to noon. Indeed, my goal was to derive pleasure from the degree of evil I found in Rush Limbaugh. I was looking forward to a jovial discussion with Orson to confirm just how right I was. When I turned into 3, one listening session turned into a week's worth, and the next thing I knew, I was starting to doubt my pre-programmed self. I was still a Democrat. I was still a liberal. But after listening to 4 months while putting thousands of miles on my car, I couldn't believe that I once thought this man was a Nazi or anything else. While I couldn't accept the premise that he was speaking my language, I marveled at how he could take a breaking news story and offer an entertaining and clear analysis that was like nothing I had ever seen on television, especially the silly Sunday morning shows, which had been my previous one-stop shop for my political opinions. Most important, though, Limbaugh, like the professor I always wanted but never had the privilege to study under, created a vivid mental picture of the architecture of a world that I resided in but couldn't see completely, the Democrat media complex. Embedded in Limbaugh's analysis of politics was always a tandem discussion on the media. Each segment relentlessly pointed to collusion between the media and the Democrat Party. If the Clarence Thomas hearing showed me that something was wrong, It was the ensuing years of listening to Limbaugh and Dennis Prager, who at the time was also undergoing a political transformation from the Democrat to the Republican Party, explained to me with eerie precision what exactly was wrong. I swallowed hard and conceded to Orson that he was right. Later on in Andrew's life, he was on with Bill Maher. Uh, Actually, he was on with Maher twice. The first one was a regular, nothing happening, and then the second time was in 2009 when he was on with Michael Eric Dyson. As a matter of fact, Andrew had brought out his best skill research during that, and he had said that he did his nexus researching before the program. He knew that somebody was likely to attack Rush that week since the Obama complex had put Rush in the Zelensky crosshairs that week. Andrew continued. I also knew that back around 9/11, Maher made some controversial comments that got him boycotted in several markets, and that Rush had defended him. So before the show, I emailed Rush and asked him about it. Yes, Rush told me. I even received a handwritten thank you note from Bill Maher. Let me end on this note, I said. Back in 2001, when you were attacked by two yahoos down in Houston, when you said what you said I'm politically incorrect, it was a Republican establishment. It was Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Michael Medved, and Dennis Prager who came to your defense, and you sent Rush Limbaugh a letter, a note thanking him for this. You could actually sense the air going out in the room as the audience stared at Maher. Holy crap! Written over each and every face. You're part of the bullying tactic, I continued. Calling a person a racist is the worst thing you can call somebody in this country. And it went on to say that Maher said that Rush sang Barack the Magic Negro, and picking it up from there, Andrew said, my heart leaped with joy. I had suspected that Maher would bring up Barack the Magic Negro, and once again I had done my research. Thank God Ariana had hired me under those false pretenses. Barack the Magic Negro was a parody song Rush had based on a column of the same title by leftist Los Angeles Times columnist David Aronston, an absurdist essay in which he sarcastically praised Obama as an ethereal, magical black man who could perform political wizardry because of his intellect and mixed racial heritage. Maher clearly didn't know what he was talking about. So Rush Limbaugh basically inspired Andrew Breitbart to not only change his thinking and expand his thinking, but like I said at the beginning, Andrew Breitbart was another gatekeeper, and I mean, there's a lot that I could say about Andrew Breitbart and Rush Limbaugh, but I won't, so I will continue. Rush Limbaugh's wife, Kathryn Adams, had gone on the show and gave a well-spoken eulogy. There's a video on it in the link below, but I'll read it. Kathryn Adams Limbaugh on our beloved Rush. This is his wife, Kathryn, speaking. Hello, everyone. I know that I am most certainly not the Limbaugh you that you had tuned in to listen to today. I, like you, very much wish Rush was behind this golden microphone right now, welcoming you to another exceptional 3 hours of broadcasting. For over 32 years, Rush has cherished you, his loyal audience, and I always look forward to every single show. It is with profound sadness that I must share with you directly that our beloved Rush, my wonderful husband, passed away this morning due to complications from lung cancer. And so many of you know, losing a loved one is terribly difficult, even more so when that loved one is larger than life. Rush will forever be the greatest of all time. Rush was an extraordinary man, a gentle giant, brilliant, quick-witted, genuinely kind, extremely generous, passionate, courageous, and the hardest working man I know. And I forgot to hit the share. There we go. Despite being one of the most recognized, powerful people in the world, Rush never let the success change his core or beliefs. He was polite and respectful to everyone he met. Even most recently, when he was not feeling well in the hospital, he was so appreciative to every single doctor and nurse and custodian and first responder. He never wanted to put anyone out and always thanked them profusely for their help. From today on, there will be a tremendous void in our lives, and of course on the radio. Rush loved our miraculous country beyond measure. An unwavering patriot, he loved our United States military, our flag, our Constitution, our founding fathers. He proudly fought and defended conservative values in a way that no one else can. Rush often stood up and took L's on his own because he knew it was the right thing to do. Rush encouraged so many of us to think for ourselves, to learn and to lead. He often said it did not matter where you started or what you look like. As Americans, we all have endless opportunities like nowhere else in the world. Rush gave us hope that through hard work and determination, we can overcome the obstacles in our lives and be our best. Many of you started small businesses or pursued personal dreams because Rush gave you the faith that you could. He made the most complex issues simple to understand while making that level of genius look easy. It most certainly wasn't anything but easy. Irreplaceable, remarkable talent. On behalf of the Limbaugh family, I would like to personally thank each and every one of you that prayed for Rush and inspired him to keep going. You rallied around Rush and lifted him up when he needed you the most. I am certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if he could be here today, he would be. He loved you and he loved this radio program with every part of his being. Instead, we know our Rush is in heaven, encouraging us in the same way he always did on earth. Rush's love for our country and belief that our best days are ahead live on eternally. In Rush's honor, may we all continue Rush's mission in our individual lives and communities. I know many of you listening are terribly sad. We all are. I'm terribly sorry to have to deliver this news to you. God bless you, Rush, and God bless our country. One of the things that had endeared me to Rush also was he had 35 undeniable truths. I won't read them. The link will be in the description below. But you know, just to sum it up, and he summed it up with number 19 in his updated 35 undeniable truths. He said, my first 35 undeniable truths are still undeniably true. You know, and he also said that too many Americans can't laugh at themselves anymore. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, and there is a wonderful photo on RushLimbaugh.com, and I'll just leave you with this. This is in loving memory of Rush Hudson Limbaugh III. Leave a comment below and tell me your opinions about Rush. Tell me your memories of Rush Limbaugh. And I'll see you in the next video. Rush Limbaugh died on Wednesday, and there are still tributes going out to him. I had read one of them yesterday, but there's another one, this from thefederalist.com, and it's entitled How Listening to Rush as a Democrat Made Me a Better, or Taught Me to Be a Better Person by Scott J. Street. As a child growing up in the 1990s, I did not like listening to Rush Limbaugh. I was a Democrat, he was a Republican. I was an intellectual who wanted to go to Yale University. He was a populist. I liked the Clintons, he didn't. I often found his arguments to be shallow and reactive. Mine were anything but that, of course. Yet as I reflected on Limbaugh's death this week, I realized that those many hours I was supposed to listen to his radio show, usually in the car with my parents or grandparents, if they weren't listening to Laura Schlesinger or Jim Rome, two other radio titans of that era, taught me as much about debating politics as any class that I ever took, or book that I ever read. Rush had a talent for spinning stories. He delivered politics to the masses. He made conservative arguments through real-world examples that everybody could relate to. Sure, he was sometimes vile when he called Hillary Clinton a witch with a capital B, or when he said Barack Obama hated America. I could go on, but that's not the point. What matters is that a character like Limbaugh could only exist in America. As a Democrat, I had to deal with him, and I did. We all did. Limbaugh embodied the American belief, unique in the world, that more speech is better than less. Obama knew that. In 2012, he gave a speech to the United Nations and said this: "As president of our country and commander-in-chief of our military, I accept that people are going to call me awful things every day, and I will always defend the right to do so. Americans have fought and died around the globe to protect the right of all people to express their views, even views that we profoundly agree with. We do not do so because we support hateful speech, but because our founders understood that without such protections, the capacity of each individual to express their own views and practice their own faith may be threatened. We do so because in a diverse society, efforts to restrict speech can quickly become a tool to silence critics and oppress minorities. We do so because, given the power of faith in our lives and the passion that religious differences can inflame, the strongest weapon against hateful speech is not repression, it is more speech. The voices of tolerance that rally against bigotry and blasphemy and lift up the values of understanding and mutual respect. Those words were a distant memory. Today, Democrat Party leaders, including one of Obama's top advisors, want to create truth commissions and punish people who support Donald Trump as a threat to national security. Obama has been silent in the face of these attacks on America's most important freedom. He shouldn't be. In October 2019, Obama slammed the growing number of young wokesters on the left, telling them to get over that quickly. The world is messy, he added. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws. People who you are fighting may love their kids and may share certain things with you. Rush Limbaugh was part of that messy world I grew up in. Ignoring him would have been easy. Dealing with him made me a better person, a better student, and a better lawyer. The leftists should take that lesson to heart and get back to protecting speech, not silencing it. And that is so very true right there. I mean, like I said yesterday, many people on the left had vilified Rush's death, saying that they're glad that he had died. And I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again today. There are those on the conservative side who probably had spoken ill of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. However, those are few, and those are a scant few, whereas those who supported Rush Limbaugh's death and back in 2012 Andrew Breitbart's death, they were the ones who were mean, hateful, violent, and, just downright rude. So, that's just how, that's just the nature of the beast at times. But speaking of former President Trump, he basically said something real good. This from the Washington Examiner by Zachary Hollis-Jack. He was with us all the way. Trump describes relationship with Limbaugh. Former President Donald Trump described his friendship with Rush Limbaugh in one of his first interviews since leaving office. Trump pointed out that he didn't know Limbaugh personally until he ran for president, but that the two soon formed a close relationship. The former president added that the iconic radio talk show host was with us all the way in terms of political support. There was nobody like him. He was the best at what he did, Trump said during an interview with One American News Network. He understood early what was happening with the whole MAGA movement, if you want to call it that. And it turned out he was a great friend and a great ally. He was a supporter right from the beginning, literally from the time I came down on the escalator with Melania, and Rush liked what I had to say, and just about from that point he was on our side, and that was without knowing him, he said. Trump said he got to know Limbaugh during his 2016 campaign. Ever since Limbaugh heard Trump's speech and liked what he heard. The former president noted Limbaugh's steadfast support during his unsuccessful re-election campaign as well. Trump said that he and Limbaugh enjoyed golfing together and that he used to refer to the host as the bull, given his powerful swing. When asked about if he used Limbaugh's audience to get a pulse on what policies to support, Trump said you sort of knew by listening. He did something very few people could do. He would just talk, Trump said, and that was not easy to do. You knew where he stood pretty much just by listening to his show. He was a tough man, Trump said. Limbaugh died on Wednesday morning at his home in Palm Beach, Florida, after a battle with lung cancer. Now, I was not a huge supporter of Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, you know, I did, like I keep saying, I did not vote for him in 2016, though I did in 2020. And I mean, just seeing that from about Rush Limbaugh kind of makes both of them human. Now, full disclosure, I didn't even listen to Rush during 2016. As a matter of fact, I think I stopped listening. I want to say about 2009, 2010 was when I actually, just stopped listening because I was focusing on a few other things at the time. But yeah, I mean, Limbaugh was with Trump, and the saying goes, just pick your friends, and apparently Trump and Rush had a very good friendship. Now, John Cass has a very interesting article from Town Hall, and it says that the death of Rush Limbaugh leaves a gaping hole in the heart of conservative America. When conservative radio giant Rush Limbaugh died, it took only seconds for the vultures of the left to swoop down and begin picking at the public corpse. Not all on the left did so. Some were gracious, but many were filled with glee and rapture that the great enemy was gone. I won't begin to dignify them with a response. They reveal themselves, and if you wish to read that sort of thing, I'm positive you'll find it elsewhere. I prefer to mourn Limbaugh as a great American, a great conservative, a tremendously talented broadcaster who loved his country and its traditions of individual liberty. And he unapologetically made millions of dollars doing it, which fed the rage of his detractors. Limbaugh was a man with public wants in a bombastic, albeit entertaining manner, who, on the radio, trolled his political and philosophical opponents before they controlled Twitter, infuriating them and inspiring their hatred. But he embraced those words. He went public with his addiction to painkillers, as portions of his audience were going through similar chaos, and he understood instinctively that big government and big liberal corporate media and their big tech masters are adversaries of individual liberty. Not since the late President Ronald Reagan and William F. Buckley has there been such an important conservative voice in America. And unlike Buckley, and perhaps even more so than Reagan, Limbaugh spoke directly to the forgotten Americans. They live in what's derisively called flyover country. marginalized by the Washington political establishment, both Democrat and Republican. He knew who he was. He had a sense of humor about himself. He was a great entertainer, yes, but he knew what he believed. He was no reed in the wind, and he remembered who his audience was as Reagan moved off the national stage, leaving a void. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, you couldn't walk into a factory, garage, butcher, or machine shop without hearing his show. Some even had Rush listening rooms. His audience began to grow. His program soon was syndicated, reaching more than 25 million people a week. He resurrected dying AM radio and became his own political movement. Without him, the Republicans wouldn't have taken back both houses of Congress in 1994, the Republican Revolution. He made it fun to be a Republican again. He was a kingmaker for former President Donald Trump when he told his audience that Trump is one of us. Until Limbaugh came along and later Fox News, there was no mass media outlet that reflected conservative sensibilities. Think of all the forgotten in blue states, now with public discourse dominated by liberal viewpoints. In a graceful tribute to the dying Limbaugh before the election, my former Tribune colleague John McCormick in realestatepolitics.com wondered if his loyal audience would give Rush one last election victory in November. Million by million, listeners got more from their radio speakers than whatever Limbaugh said into his microphone. They learned that while they might be ideological outliers in their families, their workplaces, their schools, or their neighborhoods, they weren't alone. They were part of something much bigger than themselves. Right of center Americans who long had felt isolated were now part of a fervent community that gathered for daily liturgy. Now that he's gone, I wonder, who, if anyone, could fill that void? Today, there are few national Republican political figures who can explain conservatism to a national audience. The political right, busy with building a great funeral pyre, has been arguing among itself how best to proceed against a progressive Democrat's superior position in culture, entertainment, academia, social and news media, and the left busily grinds Rush's bones to make their bread. Just as there was no one to fill Buckley's role or Reagan's, I don't think there is anyone who could fill Reagan or Limbaugh's place. It just doesn't work that way. Those who think about replacing Limbaugh should remember why he was a success on his radio program. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, year after year, decade after decade, until lung cancer claimed him. It wasn't just talent or the ability to command that killer schedule. It wasn't that he wasn't a phony. It was that he wasn't a phony. You can't do 3 solo hours of radio a day for as long as he did and be a phony. The audience has ears. It knows a phony. Many pundits take themselves far too seriously, or they mock everything and hide behind the juvenile sarcasm of the radio morning zoo host. Limbaugh didn't. He was wise enough not to take himself all that seriously. He loved poking fun at the bombastic public personality he'd created. Even when I think I'm wrong, I'm right, Limbaugh said once. I am all-knowing. He had such great reach that I appreciated when he occasionally would read my columns on the air. Once he read a column in which I read football for concussions, predicting that the game would die off just like the Marlboro Man. Rush described me as a liberal sports writer, so he wasn't all-knowing, but he was a great broadcaster, and his death leaves a gaping hole in the heart of conservative America. You know, I also said yesterday that there were 2 sad days in the history of conservatism. One, Wednesday, February 5th, or February 17, 2021, when Rush Limbaugh passed away. The other one, and one just as big, March 1st, 2012. That's when Andrew Breitbart passed away. And just like there is no one that could take Breitbart's place, there is no one who could take the place of Rush Limbaugh, who is the godfather of American, or of talk radio as a whole, and most importantly, political talk radio. And I had mentioned in yesterday's video about the left spewing hatred and glee over Limbaugh's death. Well, Governor Mike Huckabee has a few choice words for them. This from Fox News. Mike Huckabee blasts left-wing pundits who celebrated Rush Limbaugh's death. They should be ashamed. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee slammed the shocking and unconscionable remarks by some media pundits celebrating the death of conservative talk radio icon Rush Limbaugh. It's shocking to me that even in a person's death, are unable to find any kind of human kindness. It's just beyond me to understand that, Huckabee said during an interview on the Faulkner Focus. Celebrating a person's death, I don't care who that person is, unless it's Osama bin Laden, it is just, to me, it's unthinkable, unconscionable, and these people are proud of what they're saying. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. Huckabee asserted that the media's lack of adult behavior is a result of Limbaugh holding a mirror up to the hypocrisy of the far left and exposing truths within them that they refuse to see. He added that despite poking fun at people and arguing on points he thought were important, Limbaugh never hated anyone in the same way that some other media personalities seem to. A number of media personalities on Twitter appear to make fun of or celebrate the death of Limbaugh. It's easy to make fun of Rush Limbaugh right now, but it's important to remember that he also brought a lot of people a lot of joy by dying. TV writer Mike Drucker said plainly, "If I had to say something positive, I guess I'm glad Rush Limbaugh lived long enough to get cancer and die," comedian Paul F. Tompkins said. Various media outlets appear to portray Limbaugh in a negative or controversial light yesterday, writing obituaries and tweets that were less than flattering. NPR tweeted that Limbaugh was known for propelling Republican candidates and attacking women, blacks, and Latinos. NBC News wrote the Presidential Medal of Freedom honoree outraged critics with his long history of sexist, homophobic, and racist remarks. Huffington Post went even further, labeling Limbaugh as the bigoted king of talk radio who saturated America's airwaves with cruel bigotries, lies, and conspiracy theories for over 3 decades. Esquire magazine called Limbaugh a blight on America and a talk radio titan who was responsible for and a talk radio titan was responsible more than any other non-politician for the spread of the prion disease from movement conservatism to the Republican Party. He ranks with Father Coughlin and Joe McCarthy among the country's most destructive demagogues. Now, that's just sick and wrong. You know, I mean, I, for one, did not say anything bad about Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she died, you know, and I mean, the outrage out there is just incredible. Leave a comment below what you think about Rush Limbaugh's death. You know, were you a fan of Limbaugh's? Were you a Democrat who listened, you know, just to poke fun at him, or did you actually enjoy what he said? And I'll see you in the next video. And that's going to do it for the news for this week. I am Mick Bulow. Again, if you like what you watch, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell an enemy or two even. And I will be back next week. Until next time, peace.